Okay, go for it.
Okay, Rose, let's call to order here at 11:11, the January 22nd, 2021 Governance Committee meeting. Can we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Rose, will you do the roll call, please?
Mike Can,
Here.
Diane Eynon,
Here.
and Rick Jones.
Yeah.
Everybody should have in front of them the minutes from the April 6, 2021 meeting. Could you please give those a brief review? And then we'll accept the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I reviewed the minutes of the previous meeting and I make a motion that they be approved.
All right, motion. And do we have a second? Diane is on mute, so we'll take a second.
Oh, yeah, she raised her hand. She seconded.
Okay.
Second, sorry.
All good. All good. Okay. Old business. Rose, let's bring everybody up to speed.
Well, I want to also just verify for the record, even though I know the answer. Joe, can you please verify that you sent out the letter to Ulster NH Realty telling them that they needed to attend the meeting today to discuss their project compliance issues for 2020?
Yes, I copied you on that, Rose, so you have it, right, but yes, yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
So yes, he did. Obviously, he sent it out. He double checked the address and a few things with me, so we know it went to the right location and we know that there should have been no issue.
And we turned
There's
it,
no one in the waiting room.
and it went out last week.
Okay.
Yes, you did it right away. Yes.
And no phone call, no email. Is that right, Rose?
Yep. No, sir, I've not gotten, I checked my emails this morning, even though I'm away. I checked my emails this morning and made sure that I didn't get anything. And I got zero response last week about the letter sent from Joe. As a reminder, we asked them to attend the board meeting in May. And then I called and spoke to him personally and said, you have to attend the June board meeting because you missed May. And then they did not attend. I sent him a calendar invite that was accepted.
Mhm.
So I know he had it. And like I said, we spoke on the phone, and then Joe sent them the letter that we had discussed in the board meeting about it being necessary for them to attend. If you turn to page 7, you will see the ratings dropped. Part of that is possible that the ratings dropping happened when it was still Golden Hill as opposed to Ulster NH, because the switchover was in May. However, if you go to page 8, you will see that there is a decrease in the number of patients from 19 to 20. So the top bold number is 20, the bottom bold number is 19. The patient numbers did drop by a couple hundred. However, the number of employees dropped by about 100. So it doesn't, proportionately, it's not the same drop. I just think it wasn't excusable.
Rose, can
Rose,
I
is this
draw attention back to page 8 or 7, okay? Where you have the operations and the project facility and total FTEs. In that, in red with the COVID information, I have a question on that. So the facility was cited 2 times during the most recent infection and control inspection. 22 residents of 102 have been confirmed by the end of 25, April 25th, 2021. Then under it, it says 0 residents and 0 staff. So
For the week, for that week. So that week. So that was like a year to date. This was copied and pasted directly from the nursing home database website. So it's not my information.
Okay.
The information that I physically got from them is what's on page 8. And then what I got from them was also the total FTEs. They were supposed to have 330. We
Mhm.
agreed to it in September.
I know.
By December, the average FTE was down to 205. So it's not like they were down to 205 by December 31st. They were down to a point that was the average.
December of what year? December of,
The same year. We closed in September of 2020, and this drop happened 4 months within a 4-month time period. So it wasn't at December 31st they cut 100 employees. The average of that whole time was down that much.
okay. Rose,
Did we ask them about this when we did how many people I think I asked them how many employees they felt they would retain.
They said, oh, no, they were not allowed to cut a single nursing.
Right.
No.
in the
Right.
contract, Diane and Mike, I went back over the contract
Yes.
that Rose provided me with, and in the contract, they pledged 330 FTEs.
Right.
Rose, up on page 8, you mean to tell me they have, at any given point in time, they have 7,000 people there?
Yes, that's what they're saying. Yeah.
This is not, does that seem
Yeah,
I didn't know it was that many.
impossible to anybody?
That's the number during the month. So that's the number for the month, right? So like you might have been there for a week.
Oh, the
That month.
cumulative,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
cumulative number.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, I was going to ask the same question. It didn't seem possible that they had 7,000 people at the facility.
Yeah. So that would be the entire number of patients for the month. So you might not stay there for the full month. And I obviously the temporary ones do not.
Yeah.
Rose, it'd be useful to go back to when this was being managed by the previous entity and get at least 12 months worth of that data.
Well, those are the same 5 months in 2019 is down below.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's that's okay. So it's confusing. This is the chart they did, so I didn't edit it in any way.
Things
So,
are moving so quick. I don't remember when we closed on this. It was August of last year.
Yeah, it was August of 2020, and that's what's so frustrating about the decrease in staff.
So Chair, I've thought a lot about this one. And I have 2 approaches, and maybe there's 4, but one, we send them a letter through Joe that says, under the contract, we're allowed to send an accountant to look at your books. And I'm paraphrasing. The books being to examine and ask questions around why did they drop so many people? Did they decrease hours of these people and people quit? Did they change the medical coverage of the people who work there and therefore people quit? What are all the reasons for that? I mean, that's one possibility. I don't know how much you're going to learn by going in there. They're just going to potentially make it up as they go along. I don't
We've
know.
asked them to come in and tell us what happened, and they won't come in. This is the
Right,
third
exactly.
thing
So
they've
we
blown
go
up.
in there. So
No.
there's a lot of cost to us, whatever, which brings me to the
I don't
second.
think we should incur the cost though, Rick.
Right.
We've asked them to come in several times, 3 times as a matter of fact, to actually explain the reductions on all these sheets and all these stats.
So
And he's failed to do so.
second,
Now, if you remember when they were applying for the tax inducements, did not miss a meeting or call Rose or make sure something was going on or a special meeting. So
oh, sure.
I feel as though that we're all doing our due diligence here to bring in this client, the client, and he's refusing to come in. He's refusing to answer our questions. I feel as though we should just move ahead. We should follow the process and we should keep the ball rolling. Okay.
Well, that's my second recommendation was exactly that, since the first seems problematic, although it shows continued great diligence on our part and fairness.
Correct.
The second choice is to simply send them a letter and inform them that the board will be
Moving ahead.
assume that you have no intention of talking to us, and therefore we are going to kill your inducement.
Yeah, I've read some of Joe's crafty letters and I'm very impressed with them. So I'm sure
So
Joe.
I make a motion to that effect, that the recommendation of the governance committee to be reviewed in the meeting in July is that we tell essentially the nursing home that their inducement is coming to an end.
So we're going to ask Joe, just so Joe and I are both clear, to prepare a resolution to put them back on the tax rolls. Are we going to claw back or just simply move forward?
Move forward. Clawing back goes back. Who do we claw back?
It would go back until September. They paid the school tax in September,
You know
and
what?
then
It makes it-
January's property tax.
At this point, I don't disagree. However, I don't want to be vindictive, if you would. We could claw back. The tax benefit accrued to a different owner in the past. Let's just go forward.
No, September did not. September.
No, I know that. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
before that. Just go
I-
forward.
I think we should just move forward. And the letter is, we operated in good faith. We invited them here. How many times? No show. They've left us no recourse. We operated in good faith. They have not. This clearly is not an important relationship to them. You know, we're done.
Okay.
We're
One
divorcing.
other thing I wanted to say too is we did receive a letter from a staff person at Golden Hill that was telling us that the conditions had changed and that it was not a nice place to be
And
employed.
that was not part of the original conversation or contract when we first worked this out with them.
No.
Yeah.
And I think we all moved ahead with this transition, thinking that, we were going to create something that we could be involved in a little bit more and have our finger on the pulse. And it spiraled so fast. It's unbelievable. So
It's really disappointing.
it is disappointing. It's disappointing. And I think governance, we should move this ahead, and Joe should get his letter out, and go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Should I invite them to the July meeting also?
Joe, it wouldn't hurt, right?
Okay.
I mean, do we invite them
Why?
or just simply say it's on the agenda? Just say it's
Yeah,
on, we're
it's on the
warning you,
agenda.
it's on the agenda.
You know what? That may be better off as put it they are on the agenda. Yeah.
It's on the
let's stop
agenda
referring-
for a resolution to,
Diane's
with a
correct.
resolution, blah, blah, blah.
Let's stop
Diane's
referring
correct.
to them as a
100%.
nursing.
Yeah.
Let's stop referring to them as a nursing home. Rose has it listed here correctly. It's Ulster NH Realty. This is a real estate transaction for them.
Yeah.
They don't care about.
Yeah. They failed to respond. I think
No.
put them on the
Three
agenda.
strikes. 3 strikes, they're out.
We'll put them on the agenda. Let's not do the invite with them.
No.
And then Joe will get his letter out.
So
Okay.
so Joe will send them a letter
We're
that there
gonna-
will be on the agenda and with a resolution.
That we're
to-
moving ahead to put them back on the tax roll.
Okay, and then Joe should also prepare a resolution for
Correct.
us to put them back on the tax
Vote
roll.
onto the board.
I'm
Correct.
I have to say it again. I'm so disappointed that this is the way it went.
I am too.
Rose, I am too. I think we need to have, thinking of all eventualities, if they come to the meeting and plead whatever, we need to have, and I can work with you, Mike and Diane, a laundry list of information that we want from them with a deadline. Things like, well, tell us about your medical plans. Did you change them, causing people to quit? Did you change the hours of your staff from 40 hours a week or 35
Rick,
to 20?
I agree with you, but I think we're going to get nothing but lip service there.
Yeah, that's true.
It-
I'll be
it-
ready with the
I
budget.
got that.
say that.
So when we did our site visit, I was told about all these positive things that were going on. And so when the numbers actually come back, it was like, whoa, that's
Right.
not.
And listen, if you're not going to show up to defend yourself 3 times to a meeting and say, oh, look, here's what happened. We had to cut staff because of this, they would have come. They would have
They
given that
were
choice.
a month and a half late paying their second portion of the IDA fee. They were late with their annual reporting
Yeah.
and asked that we waive the late fee. I asked them to send, per Jimmy, that chart showing the patients. I'm making up the date, but we said we need it by Friday. And then I emailed them and I said, I still don't have this. What happened? Oh, we thought we sent it to you.
Yeah,
And
right.
then it was, everything has been this way.
Well, apparently it's important enough to show up at every meeting to get a tax inducement, but it's not important enough to maintain the level of health care and service you have to your
Yeah.
people that are staying there. So
And Chair, I do have one follow-up question.
Joe.
This series of transactions was, if I can go back in my memory bank, was an effort by the county to get out of the county nursing home business,
Right.
which is not unusual, obviously, in upstate New York. When this project goes back on the tax rolls, obviously their taxes are presumably going to go up. That may have some impact on their pro forma. That's not on us, obviously, but what I wanted to do is just make sure that we were thinking about, there's no county health issues implicated here, or county operation issues, or local operation issues. I mean, the county has dealt with the fact that the county is no longer in the nursing home business, and whether this survives or doesn't survive is not of concern to us or of concern to the county.
I think that's how we have to look at it, because it's a separate entity completely.
Yeah. I'm just making sure that we're thinking about all the possible ramifications. I got it. Great.
The entity has shown bad faith.
Oh, there's no doubt about that, Rick. No doubt about that.
And if they claim that doing this is going to degrade their service even further, well, then hopefully they'll have to deal with the state agency that manages them in terms of maintaining the level of service required.
Yeah, one positive is that law passed recently, right? So now there is actual staffing requirements in New York State. So yeah.
So my letter to them is going to be very firm, very direct. Resolution on the agenda. I'm not going to say, by the way, it's a public meeting, you're invited to attend, nor am I going to say that they are invited to attend. I'll just doom. Governance committee has reviewed. You didn't come to the governance committee. You didn't come to 2 other meetings. Okay, got it.
Okay.
Very good.
Perfect. Okay. Let's move on to the FOIL policy.
Do we need a motion?
Oh, did we need a motion for that letter? I don't think so.
For the recommendation to the board?
Maybe we should.
I
made the motion. I'll make the motion.
There's a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Under old business, FOIL policy, page 9.
And we want to explain a little of what you're looking at. It's a little confusing. There's a couple parts issue, and this is the reason I had asked Joe to attend the meeting today.
Mm-hmm.
So, number one, there is a copy of the policy that our former board counsel had prepared. And then somebody in Joe's office, a colleague of Joe's at Hodgson Russ, helped go through it and kind of correct some issues and some things that maybe should be changed. However, that on page 9 is what Joe's colleague had looked through. On page 16 was the one we had from our prior board counsel, with a few changes we had made. So I have a couple of questions of things to add to page 9. And then also the reason for Joe was a clarification of duties here, because it seems that, just so everybody knows, we have a FOIL officer. Our FOIL officer is Joe at this moment, okay?
Right.
And the way we were wording it was to say that it was going to be our board counsel. Hopefully that continues to be Joe. But I think it makes more sense. You know, you don't name the person, you just say it's the board counsel. But then the person in Joe's office had recommended we actually change the titles here, and that Joe wouldn't be the FOIL officer. He would be the, in my head, I want to say like the FOIL override, but I know that's not what it means. FOIL appeals officer, right?
Actually, I would be the counsel. There'd be 2. I think it was you would be the first level, and then the chair or some other member of the IDA would be the second level. And what my colleague recommended is that I step out, or any counsel step out of those 2 positions, because it's a potential. And again, the context here is there was a letter attacking our FOIL policy prepared by the same law firm that is the beneficiary of the developer's litigation work relating to the Kingstonian. And we thought, after I discussed this with one of my colleagues, we said, well, why don't we get the lawyer out of that chain? Because that way there's no question that the lawyer is in a position to give independent advice to the FOIL officers in connection with the consideration of FOIL requests. So it's really, in my view, it's a cleanup. There are situations where and our original policy had the lawyer as one of the participants or one of the officers, if you will. But we thought, given the scrutiny being applied to our policy, why not get the lawyer out of it and just have staff and a member of the IDA as the entities. So that's really the background.
So we would be the responsible party. And then this is the part I just wanted like clarity on with the segregation of duties here. Right now, a FOIL comes in. Now that we've gone back to using just one law firm, Hodgson Russ here, a FOIL comes in, I send it to Joe, and then Joe's firm sends out a 5-day letter saying that we'll get back to you in 5 days with the timeline of when we'll have the information together for you. Then by that end of the time period, we're within that time period, Joe's firm sends out the documents that were requested as part of the FOIL. Is that still the way it would work? It's just that the responsibility is then on the staff for getting that done in a certain time frame?
Yeah. We'd still be doing the work on your behalf and giving you legal advice. It just would be clearer that there'd be a separation.
Joe or Rose, on page 14, section G.
Yeah, so then section, which one?
G, I guess we seem to have a couple of caveats here, and the biggest amount of time, the most money spent was that regarding a lawsuit. So Joe, when we get a request that takes more than 2 hours of Rose's time or one of her people's time, it says we can charge at 25 cents a page. But then G there were a couple of caveats here which almost make me believe that lawsuits are exempted or.
No. So Rick, this other policy, the second one that you're looking at is the one that we had, and then Joe's firm needs to go over some of the fees part of it. Again, they had fixed some of the segregation of duties issues. But one of the issues that we had when we talked about this is we thought that we could charge for staff time. Well, let me rephrase. We can charge for staff time at the rate of the lowest paid staff person, regardless of what that dollar amount is, whoever's able to perform that duty. The issue is we thought that would be from like the beginning of the process. So we thought that would be like, okay, it took me 20 hours to do this, 2 hours in, we're going to start charging. That's not the way it works. So we can't charge for me to research or to find those documents, no matter how much time it takes. The only thing we can charge for is for me to make the copies, right, Joe?
That's right.
So
Okay.
I was thinking that was one of the things we would have to revise here. When we had come up with this policy and governance, we never did put it through to the full board. And it was like, well, let's do this and then we'll get the advice of counsel. So now we have the advice of counsel for a couple of issues here. And I was thinking, unfortunately, that it does make sense to charge from the beginning for making those copies, because the time of getting the information and pulling it doesn't count. And that's really, I think, the most time consuming part. Joe, we can't charge for blacking out information either, right?
No.
Yeah. That's literally the bulk of the time.
So I'm still confused as to what we can charge for.
It's standing at the photocopy machine.
Standing at the photocopy. So if Rose has to spend.
That's the essence. It's if it's something crazy that you need to do to make the photocopies. But the cost of being a government is you've got to run around for citizens.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
that's bad.
now, let me clarify again here. So again, for time purposes, if, so let's say this, one of the foils was 10,000 pages, right? Because of the sheer volume, I couldn't just print PDFs from my emails. I printed them out onto paper and then blacked it out because that made it easier because of the amount of stuff we're dealing with. Then I had to scan it in to send back to Joe for him to send. So Joe, my printing there, does that count? Or my scanning back in, does that count? Because it's hard when everything is done virtually now, right? Like we're not making physical copies to FedEx off somewhere. Or do we can get clarification on that?
But hypothetically speaking, if you made 10,000 copies,
Yeah.
you only can charge for everything in excess of 10, correct?
In excess of 10 copies?
10 copies. You're allowed, aren't you allowed like up to 10 and then you start the
Yes.
billing, right? On your, not only if it exceeds the 2 hours worth of your time.
Well, the 2 hours was our choice. I
Okay.
think, is the
think we
10
need-
copies the open government rule? I don't think,
Yeah,
or maybe we made that up ourselves. I
I
don't
think we
remember now.
made that up because I don't have that in my office. I do
Okay.
know that after X amount of copies, you know, whoever's foiling us is responsible for the cost of that.
I
Okay.
think the 2-hour
And
gimme
as
is,
far as the search goes for the an inspection of records and stuff, I do know we're on the hook for that. Just like Joe said, that's the
and for that
Cost of
reason,
being
for
government.
that reason that we're on the hook for that researching and gathering it, I think we need to get rid of the 2 hours, because certainly you can make a lot of copies in 2 hours, in which case you're never going to collect the fees for it. So get rid of that
Joe,
2 hours. That's the
correct us if we're wrong. Can we eliminate that part of the FOIL policy where they can be on the hook the minute Rose starts?
Yeah, but only with making copies, not with
Yeah.
finding the
That-
data.
that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. Just what and I'm saying this to play devil's advocate here. Who's to say something doesn't come up enormous again where, you know, nobody's for it and everybody wants copies and it's 8,000 pages. I mean, that's not going to take you 20 minutes. You know what I mean? You're going to be standing there for a while.
No, it literally took, I would say 10 to 20, I don't know. It was definitely
They
20
took the-
hours or so.
I
It was
mean,
a
I know
very
I'm
long
on
time.
contracts and I'm just like, do.
The problem was we were trying to not be, I hate, it's not punitive, but
Don't
trying
say-
to, I know, trying to not be like over the top, because, you know, like I know we had specifically talked about if a reporter calls, if Bill Kemble calls and says, hey, can I just get a copy of X? You know, it's not an issue for us to just give a copy of X if it's not a huge,
That-
the problem
that's
is when it becomes abusive.
Yeah.
That's an easy one.
Okay.
So if I understand it correctly, your administrative time to gather this stuff is on us, okay? And we start charging 25 cents at the 11th copy, whether it's 12 copies or 12,000 copies.
Joe,
Well, I
are we
like
within
the idea of leaving the
within
10
guidelines?
pages.
Joe,
Is-
are we
Was
within the
I
guidelines?
correct in what I just said?
Excuse me, Rick. Are we within the guidelines to pull that out of this with the
Yeah.
2 hours?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like leaving the 10 copies for free though, or,
Yeah.
you know,
10
because
copies.
what's 10 copies?
Yeah, done.
That's fine.
I'll pull out the 2 hours.
And just remember, 10 copies is nothing until 1,000 people request 10 copies. Okay.
Right. Don't be foiling our office, Michael. So Joe, can we get clarification on what copies means when today's standards are a little bit different than
There you go.
10 years ago?
So like, for instance, whether a PDF
Counts as a copy.
is a copy, right?
And it like, if me, you know, like I said, I have to print it out, is me printing it does that count? And then me scanning it back in, does that count? I don't know. But I wouldn't do that unless it was the volume of a ridiculous,
Right.
you know,
Yep.
Would it be time spent in front of the copier, Joe?
Yeah, that's essentially what my colleague said. Yes.
All right.
so I don't know how you do that now, though,
Rose.
when everything is scanned electronically.
Yeah, Rose, for the remainder of this entire idea, you should just stand in front of the copier then.
That's my plan.
Yeah, there you go.
That's my plan.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I was wondering, if there's anything different because of the way technology is. Like, we don't have, well, we do, but they're old. We don't have any current files that are paper. Everything is scanned in, but it still takes time to print stuff.
So-
It still takes time for the printer to physically print that
But
many pages.
The
So
rest
let's
of the people
go
out
way
there
in-
don't necessarily have that luxury. You know, some people we take it for granted. Everybody's doing the same thing we're doing, and they're not. You know, so I mean,
So
No.
let Joe weigh in, Rose, as to how to charge for PDFs or whatever. And, maybe ask the client, the requester, do you want it electronically or you want it in paper? Here's the charge electronically, here's the charge paper.
Yeah, I would say it's not faster for us to do it electronically. It's just that.
I know that.
Yeah. If we want a recommendation for removing the 2 hours and then can we bring this back to the board next board meeting, and then Joe can explain to the board what time can actually be charged at that point?
that's the meeting on the 22nd.
Or is that that sounds about right? Yeah, that means the July board meeting, so it would be the 21st.
21st, yeah.
Mhm.
That's fine.
Yeah, it'd just be nice for us to have all the fees, get Joe's input, have everything fixed for the board, not to be sitting there figuring out the fees. Just get a clear understanding of what we can and can't charge and how much.
25 cents a copy after 10, and whatever time Rose spends in front of the copier. So we'll let Joe handle that and take care of that and report back to the full board on the 22nd. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Do
Any
I'm
questions?
sorry, guys, do we need a recommendation because it's bringing a policy to the board?
Um,
How about just a recommendation that we're bringing the policy before the board with the
back
change?
to the
As
full board.
discussed?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with the changes discussed?
Yeah.
Right, because we're gonna make the change about the council, the appointments, right? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yes, and that too.
Yeah,
So I'll
so
make that motion.
you're recommending the policy, plus there's some follow-up questions.
And the segregation of duties and the changes, and barring any further changes from council.
Okay. We got a motion from Rick. Second. Diane.
Thanks,
All in
Diane.
favor? Aye.
Hey,
Okay.
Chair, could I bring up one other old business piece?
Is it
Joe-
really old business? Because I don't see it on the agenda.
Yeah, it is old business.
What is it?
Joe, are we ever going to do that letter, or is it past that we wanted to send?
I'm working on it, Rick. I'll have it to Rose and Jimmy this week, and then we'll circle with you. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Hasn't fallen off.
Okay.
It's just still
And
on
don't
the-
forget, don't forget, I want to be all over the Kingstonian contract, not that I'm a.
We didn't forget.
Yeah, actually, Rick, I meant to tell you, we've scheduled the closing for Kingstonian tomorrow.
Oh, okay, I'll read it tonight.
So
Send it
I'll-
over.
I'll get you some documents this afternoon, and you'll have 15 or 20 minutes to look at it.
That's fine.
And Rick, it's 10,000 pages, so the cost to you is only 2,500 from Joe.
You're,
Oh, you guys are tough.
tattooed on my wrist. And in fact, I told my partner, Nadine Ziegler, who is going to be doing much of the drafting on that, I said, there's a gentleman, and I use that term loosely, there's a gentleman on the IDA that wants to review these documents. And no, not a problem. It's,
Yep.
do not worry, Rick. Do not worry.
Extra pot of coffee that morning, Rick. That's all.
Yeah.
4
It's
extra pot of coffee.
It's primarily that one section that defines all the things that they have to do. I think
No, and typically, Rick, just so you know, typically, although now I'm pretty well versed in them. Joe and I have a phone call and go through the documents and verify the numbers and figures and extra caveats in them for each project.
All right. All right. Any other questions on old business? Okay, Rose, let's move ahead to new business. Star Estates, failure to pay their pilot. What's the update?
Back to disappointing information. So we had discussed this at the board meeting. I then got this letter on page 23 from Highland School District after the board meeting. I believe it was actually later that day. I wrote back to them and told them that we are taking this seriously. We discussed it at the board meeting. And I followed up with Star Estate, who had told me they would have payment to the county, or I'm sorry, to the town and to the school by this past Friday. I've not received any more information again. The difficult part that we're having here is that going forward, this issue should be rectified, because I spoke with their banker myself and their tax payments are being escrowed going forward. But I know that still doesn't help the issue for backwards. So we're in this weird spot of, you know, it is going to be fixed, but I mean, how much time and what can we do to fix this back issue? So you see here, the tax payment due to the school was $28,000. It's now up to $32,000 with penalties and interest. The school in their letter explains, and I certainly understand it, that they have to include the pilot amount in their budget. They budgeted for this money. They didn't receive it. Unlike regular taxes, they're not made whole whether they get the money or not. They just flat out don't get it. So they are asking us, yes, they can sue, but they're asking us in the letter here, hold on. Therefore, we would respectfully request that the IDA consider taking action permitted under its various agreements with Star Estate to ensure that Star Estate lives up to its promises when it's received the IDA's financial assistance.
Now, of the
What do we do,
28,000,
guys?
how much have they paid? Have they paid anything?
No, zero.
Zero. Joe, any comments?
Well, you know, I mean, it's the hospitality industry. They're all crying poverty. I have a couple of hotels in Albany that are doing the same thing. But, you know, the IDAs here in Albany, the Albany area, are saying, hey, you got to pay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
What does Star Estate said?
So as of June 21st, it's at 32,000, inclusive of interest and penalties established under our pilot. So, you know, I tend to agree with Joe too, and with the statement he just made. You know, I mean, we don't have the luxury of turning around telling the school system you're not going to get your taxes. You know, I mean, the pilot is the pilot. You know, they knew, right?
What did Star Estate say, Rose?
Their reasoning is that I'm trying to say this as nicely as possible because we certainly do care. Somebody in their group passed away, but the part that's difficult with that is that the person passed away this year. This tax payment was due in September of 2020. So certainly we care and we understand that now they're in a tough situation, but this should have been dealt with 9 months ago.
Well,
And I think that the school board should not be penalized in holding. I don't know that we'll see 32,000, but certainly they should be made whole on the 28,000 plus that they budgeted for in their this year.
Oh,
and
they'll get the
money.
full 32.
Yeah.
It's just what can we do to make this happen? I mean, here's what we could say, right? We could say, fine, forget it. If you're not going to make your tax payments, you're back on the tax rolls. But you know, the part that makes me be like, is that we know this should be fixed going forward.
And the other problem is if you can't pay the 28 right now, we toss you back onto the tax rolls. What makes us believe you're going to be able to pay the 56, you know?
Right.
Yeah,
And
Right.
if they were on the tax rolls and they weren't making the tax payments, it would just ride for a year or two, you
That's
know?
correct.
So I think we could tell the school, look, you know, we're pushing them and maybe we give them until next year. But again, it's a delicate, these are really delicate communications, because what hasn't helped us is the New York State government hasn't said to businesses, hey, we're going to give you an across the board deferment like they've done for tenants and
Yeah.
court cases and statute of limitations. So I think if we immediately terminate and put them back on the tax rolls, to a certain extent, we're treating them more harshly than they would be if they were on the tax rolls. But on the other hand, we don't want to be seen as not paying attention for the affected taxing jurisdiction. So it's a difficult issue.
Can we send something out, Chair, that simply states the obvious and have them come back to us through our attorney as to specifically when this is going to be paid?
Well,
Since
they did. They told me again, specifically, it would be paid by this Friday.
well,
They
then
did say that. I read the letter
okay,
along with everybody else, right?
sorry, I missed that.
Yeah.
I don't know that we have any. What choice do
mean,
we have?
Can
have
we can, maybe we can be firm, but give them a deadline that's reason. But at the same time, again, the school is out a solid year
Yeah.
of this money. This is just, that's not okay.
So I
Well,
think
I tend to agree with what Joe's saying too. There's been a rescue plan put in place by either
I
the
know.
federal government or state and the state government to help everybody with a problem. Like, so if there are these small businesses that are really behind the eight ball with their taxes. And, this is a delicate situation here where, we would have taken much stringent steps if they just didn't have the FTEs or something, you know what I mean? It's cut and
Okay.
clean. But
What
here's
about,
the taxes.
what about we take an extremely firm stance, but do it in a reasonable way?
We'll have
For
to,
you to pay $32,000 today might not be that simple. What if we insist that by the end of July, at the very least, they have a payment plan set up to make payments, even if it's $1,000 a month and it must be paid in full by next year.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they'll go back on the tax rolls.
are school districts allowed to accept partial payments?
That's a good
That's a
question.
good question.
I don't think would they be any different than me or you, Rick?
We're not allowed to do that.
I don't know if they can, but I'm saying,
Yeah. I don't think they can.
I don't know.
Good idea,
I mean,
Rose. I don't think
Let's put it this way,
legally
Rick.
permitted.
If I'd owed outstanding school taxes living in the city of Kingston, I mean, I never even thought about that. If I went up there and I owed 30,000 and I gave you 15, would they not take it?
I don't think they're allowed to.
I don't know.
I don't either.
I think you're right, Rick. I can check on that though.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is a pilot payment. It's different.
Mhm. Yeah, right.
That's
That's
true.
the difference. Yeah.
That's true.
So let's
really,
find
it's
that
not-
out.
It's not going straight to the,
Right, and the pilot payment, like they said, they're not being made whole by somebody else. So there's nobody else coming in to make them whole if the pay, as the payments are made anyway.
Right,
So
the-
that might,
Right. The
So
county,
so let's have Joe check that and then send them this letter that Rose recommended, that you need a payment program to get it paid within a year. Otherwise, you're going back onto the,
in Rose, what, did you get a letter out to the superintendent of schools down there, Tom?
I just replied back to them. I'd already been in touch with Victoria McLaren, who's the
Okay.
school business administrator, by phone, and the interim business administrator as well prior to this, because this has been going on for 3 months or so, this issue. So I think, can we, I think the board has to decide that that's what we'll do, right? So we'll make a recommendation to the board that at the very least, they have to do this by X date. And we understand due to COVID, blah, blah, blah. The guys that are the owners of this project, I know own other restaurants and businesses in New York City. Clearly, the past year has not been very helpful for owners of businesses and restaurants in New York City.
Devastating,
Yeah.
devastating.
So, although we certainly understand and have, sympathy with the school district in the matter, I think we also have to understand where a business is coming from at this point. So at the very least, right, I think they could make $1,000 a month, and then it must be paid in full, or they go back on the tax rolls it must be paid in full by next September, or I don't know what.
Well, if it's 1,000, it would take them 2 years to pay off that.
I know. I
Plus-
was thinking
plus whatever,
balloon.
plus whatever they owe, or they coming, right?
Well,
So,
they're paying escrow already for the next payments. So because they're doing that, I thought, the $1,000, and then it would balloon towards the end, because by then they'll be up and running and in business. They expect to be operating this summer.
What
So by
about
then they
the,
should have that.
what about one bulk payment and then setting them up on a payment schedule to be paid by the first of either the fiscal school year or,
Yeah, my issue was that they don't have the actual, oh, wait,
yeah.
guys, seriously, I just got an email.
Yeah, good.
Checks are being dropped off at the town and school today. Sorry for the delay.
awesome.
They must have been listening. They must have been listening.
You know what it is? They got a camera in Joe's office looking at those nasty letters. That's what it is. Good. Congratulations to them.
Okay, well, we'll
Yeah,
stop
that's great.
talking about it.
Now let's wait for it.
Yeah,
Joe?
I'm sorry, Rose. I had budgeted
That's
an
great.
hour. Do you want me to cancel? Because I have an admin meeting at noon. Do you want me to cancel? And I don't mind canceling an admin meeting, to be honest. Or I have to jump off. It's your.
I only thought was if you had any input on the mentoring program update that's next on the agenda now that, and then I did have a couple questions for you on the policy for return, basically our enforcement policy.
And Joe, could you give us a couple seconds here on the applicant checklist, the mentoring program, just
Yeah.
so we know it's going to be a work in progress moving ahead, just like the community benefits. Things will be getting added to it moving ahead, and getting it solid. It'll take a little bit, but
I'm sorry.
let's.
Can we at least do until 12:30 or so, Joe? Is that all right?
Let me. Let me send out a note. Yep,
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
You're too valued, Joe.
Yeah, no, I don't mind missing admin meetings. I'd also be happy because I'm the chair, so it'll be canceled.
So
So I will follow up just to end this. I'll follow up with the school.
Good stuff.
I'll send them an email and
Good.
the county in the town, and I'll send them both emails and ask them to confirm that they received it today.
Okay, great. Perfect. All right. Star Estates, we'll get the update from you. Make sure the check got there. So on this mentoring, I don't know what to call it, a program checklist, applicant checklist. Once again, we gave it to everybody at the last meeting and asked anybody if they had any extra input or something they thought should be in there to please get it over to Rose. Did you receive anything from anybody? Anybody have anything? No?
I'm second guessing myself. I feel like I did receive one thing from somebody.
Okay. I know you sent it, everybody. I seen it.
Yeah, I know. I did do that.
Well, let's move right into Joe's question so we don't have him bogged down all day long. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just looking at.
So Joe, it turned into more, and Joe's leaving.
Joe just left.
Yeah,
Oh.
Elvis has left the room. So Joe, it turned into more, and I think in coordination with the hands-on approach for the pre-screen, along with this client checklist, the applicant checklist was what we're calling that here. I think the two together, I don't think anybody really leaves the room without taking a sheet of paper home reviewing it to find out exactly what they're up against here moving ahead as applying for the tax inducements or grants. And along with the hands-on approach for the pre-screen that everybody walks our future applicants through, I think the bases are pretty much covered. And, you know, I want to tell Rose, you know, she did a great job here, you know, on answering the test. So, you know, I marked it. I thought it looked good. But, you know, Joe, obviously we would like your input to make sure we're not outside the boundaries of what we're saying here also.
No, I agree that I think it's very good, and it's something that frankly we've been struggling with internally in terms of preparing something on our own for clients. The only other thought I had here with this is that at the end of the IDA application, there's a lot of good language of, hey, you know, you got to do this, you got to do that, you have to do this. And I don't think that would be bad to add it as a schedule. And then maybe also, Rose, we have that annual report schedule that's attached to our clawback agreement.
Actually attach a copy to this. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Mhm.
So Mike, was the concept here that at the first pre-screen, we'd go through this mentoring material in this, or it would happen even before then?
You know, Joe,
Before that, I think.
we said before that, because then we, you know, if you see the opening on it, and I still believe it's in there, is whether or not the project is eligible for a bond or inducement. Or I think originally we had in there, like, is it, you know, is this the path you need to take? You know, are you ready for this kind of a situation? But we changed it over to eligible for a bond or inducement. I think that pretty much lays it out. And then as you go through that checklist, you start finding out the timeline on it and whether or not you need, you know, which we recommend all the time, you retain counsel. I mean, we just seen that in one of our last clients with Alferia. You know, we mentioned it, they went out and did it, because I don't care how smart you are. This is a whole, you know, this is crazy land sometimes. You know, if you don't understand it, you're going to be left behind, and you're not going to know time of closing cost or application cost or whatever. And you're going to, I think we had a client not too long ago, over a year ago, turn around and went, it's that much? I think Joe's fees, they didn't know Joe's fees, remember? And we know who that was, but you know.
Yeah. So on page 28 is like the actual chart, the flow chart. So I think, Rick, like part of answering a question here, the reason I was saying that is that the initial consultation with agency staff, I do go through all of this stuff, but I think if I can give them this while going through it, that sometimes having that visual is more helpful. Typically what I do is, like, you call, you ask, I literally do a share screen. I show them our matrix. I show them our UTEP, right? We talk about this stuff, and then I send them the links to those things. I think what I should do ahead of time is send them that stuff and this, and then we go through this, and they have it as a visual at the same time.
Yeah, because I think sometimes people come and you tell them everything, but it's almost like a fire hose. They just can't, you know, they just can't take it all in. It's just they're being, you know, and I think that probably having a document they can refer back to with links would probably save the amount of calls you potentially will get from them asking questions that you went over with them in the beginning, but they're so overwhelmed that they're not, it doesn't mean anything really to them until they actually have to do it, right? So I think it's great to have something like this. It looks good. I think it looks really great.
So we had also talked about, like, coming up with some kind of like pamphlet or something, for lack of a better word, something a little bit prettier to give, and then not just for us to give out and email to people, but also for maybe economic development to have in their offices, so that they can give it to the people that they're trying to help as well. So would it make sense for us to finish putting the schedules, Joe, good suggestions, finish putting some of these schedules and a few things together, and then maybe working with some kind of marketing company, and, you know, maybe Orlando has some suggestions on making this really look professional.
You could call it a toolkit too.
There you
Right.
go, Diane.
It's a toolkit.
That's a great avenue right there. You know, and I don't think we want to convolute it to the point where we just have people totally confused, or, disenfranchised the coming to us, you know, and looking and going,
Right.
3,500, 4,000, you know, 79,000, you know, we don't want to do that either. So, you know, I think this is something, I think we initiated this so nobody left the room or went home or came back to us 5 weeks later in the midst of applying and say, well, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
I mean, you could just, it just be called a toolkit working with the IDA and
mhm.
going through, and or going through the application process.
You know, and maybe we add into the application as something they initial in the applicant, like, so that it's not just, oh yeah, I signed my application. No, you're going to initial that you reviewed this, that you have an understanding of what this means.
Yeah. well,
Maybe in the first section, Rose, one of the suggestions is, you know, do you qualify? Maybe as part of that, you could reference, there's a chart that we used in one of our trainings comparing the IDA to the 485B. And,
Mhm.
and not put it in the sense of, we don't want you to come, we want you to go for the 485. But, you know, financially, there's a big difference between IDA and 485.
45, yeah.
So I think it'd be useful to address that in here.
Well, one of the things I've also created and I've been using is I have an IDA like incentives calculator that kind of helps explain it. Hold on, I could show you. It's an Excel spreadsheet, and like I did talk to Joe about it to make sure that I wasn't doing anything to get us in trouble either. So that, hold on, I'm pulling it up. So that it wasn't like, oh, you're guaranteed to get these benefits. So what you do is you come in here, I send people this Excel spreadsheet and you can all see it, right or no?
Yes, I see it.
Okay, I just want to make sure because it's in the remote desktop, so I couldn't tell. Oops, sorry. So I send them this, and it's got locked cells. They fill in the yellow things for the amount of their project, and it calculates minus the legal fees or IDA fee, and some very, you know, what's the net IDA benefits at the end? Because, and obviously these numbers are massive, by the way.
I was going to ask where that job is. Where is that?
Yeah, you want on it. And then there's also this pilot calculator that helps
Mhm.
calculate it, and it's all filled in nicely, so there's less errors now with the pilot calculation.
So is what you're suggesting that you would do this and match it up against the 485 benefit?
Yeah, I could use something like that to match it up with the 485 benefit. And then, you know, maybe I also, as part of our practice, I send that to everybody. For the most part, I've been sending it to everybody, but it's like if it was warranted, and again,
I think that's a good idea with the 485B to be a comparable, but we just got to make sure it is not misunderstood that the 485 is being offered by the IDA.
Exactly.
And I think there might be a little confusion in there once we get that in the packet.
Yeah.
I'm just, you know,
You could,
or maybe we don't, you know, maybe we simply suggest, you know, and I think that's part of when a project, an applicant comes in and they're working with economic development does a good job of being well aware of what all the tools are that are available. You know, so we could maybe have a question and an answer of, is this the same thing as the 485B? And then we simply just say no and explain some of the few differences and suggest that they contact economic development or a consultant to help them with that.
that's a good idea.
I say we move ahead with this, get the schedule in there.
Okay, perfect.
It's good stuff. And like I said, it's a work in progress. And, you know, people may have the aha moment moving ahead and go, there's nothing else we can put in there. And we just keep adding to it, you know?
So,
It's going to be the same thing with the community benefits, you know?
a couple of the other things I thought of as far as what is the mentoring program mean? We had talked about last governance committee meeting, doing a training at the end of the year in November to help people understand what an FTE is and, you know, various other things. I was thinking about that, and I was also thinking about the application process. And you know, in the beginning of the application, we ask, who's your lawyer? Who's your this? Who's your that? I think we also should be putting in the application, who is the responsible financial person? Who is your comptroller or your CFO? Who is the person we should contact specifically about annual reporting? Because it's not the owner most of the time.
And
So-
even if that's who they put down and it's a smaller job, it is what it is. But you're
No, and
right.
that's fine too, but this way we know, and then we can also contact that person directly, so that, yes, we want the owner to be aware of what they're doing, but from the beginning, there is no confusion with the whoever's filling out the paperwork.
You know, and I kind of really like the thought of a, you know, a public or whatever session we're going to have to really inform people on how this actually works. Because, you know, I'm sure you guys as board members, and even Joe, you know, Joe's been around this forever, but to explain this to some really smart people, how the pilot programs work and exactly what it is, you know, and get the misconceptions out there. It's the equivalent of a monkey flying the space shuttle. Okay. And they really look at you with their heads turned sideways and say, I didn't realize that, when you're talking to them. And, you know, these are pretty educated people, you know, so
Oh, yeah.
I think that seminar, which you and Joe have already been through it once, Rose, you know, you guys gave a seminar to the school board. So I believe, you know, you probably could reproduce whatever you did there. And I think it would be good stuff, you know, for everybody.
Well, and what if we do for this year, we ask all of our projects to attend, old and new, and then going forward, can we mandate all new projects to sit through a webinar or a training so that it's not screwed up? Because seriously, some of our reporting, like we have a project, I think it was in 2019, it said they had, and they weren't doing it to be deceitful, and they were certainly well above the numbers. Or vice versa. I think one of them said they had 300 FTEs and they really had over 500.
Yeah.
So then our reporting to New York State is totally off.
Right.
And
So-
Rose, what do you do if you mandate it and they don't come, which is, you know, they don't work for us.
Yeah.
So be careful with mandating and not,
I think your best opportunity to mandate something like that is in the initial phase when you're bringing a new client in and you just present it and you put it right there, you know, and you've got a captive audience at that time.
Yeah,
They
but
want
going
the
forward, I mean something closer to the annual reporting deadline to
Yeah.
ensure
Again, I
this
don't know
stuff
how
is
to
reported
mandate.
correctly. Because other IDAs check in with their projects multiple times through the year. They do a lot more than what we're doing with annual reporting. So I don't think, like, I know Dutchess County, they have to meet with their CFO like every other month when a project's in the beginning stages. So I just don't think that it's unreasonable to say, meet with us one time.
I got an idea for mandating. Why don't you mandate it and just say, we're going to have a cocktail hour after with drinks and food. They'll come.
Yeah.
No, but all serious.
And they get to pay for it though.
Be careful of mandating.
How
And they
about
don't
two
show up.
violations of your pilot agreement? You have to go sit with Rose for 3
I think
hours.
it's a good idea. Let's try to do it as graciously as possible.
Well, I think a half an hour is honestly fine. There's
No,
not a lot that we're asking of people.
Honestly, it's a half an hour. It's going to save them time in the long run, not having to go back and forth to Rose and asking questions and not having the right
It'll
documents.
save us time and money.
It saves everybody time. The half hour or an hour is a good hour invested.
I could do, I'll tell you the ones that won't show up, and I'm sure Mike and Diane could too. You're mandated to come. Guess who's not showing up? Eeny,
Well-
miny, mo.
Then, but I'm saying what can you do? You know what you can do if they
Okay.
don't do something in their
I make a
agreement.
motion, we move on to the next issue because
Yeah. Let's get.
Rose, I trust you, and if you think that's going to work, great, I'll support it.
Okay, let's bring it back on July 21st. Okay, with the changes. All right. We don't need a motion or anything for that. We don't have anything set.
No, I'll add these things and then I'll start to talk. You want me to start to look for a marketing company or talk to Orlando about that stuff?
You know what? Why don't we wait until after
Or
the
wait.
21st, get it moving ahead, and then
Yeah.
Okay,
create
Perfect.
from there. This way we're not all over the page. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So we got policies to be created. So I think, listen, for the sake of time, okay, I know what we have. I think we maybe touch base on, it's hard to just decipher because we would like to get the finalization on the policies that are being amended. Also, the procurement, the compensation, UTEP and Matrix, I think is like a meeting in itself. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll get to that. Okay. Because that's going to take
Well,
place with the community benefits and
I think section C could go pretty quickly.
okay, let's
Based on what's
go
in here.
through it because I know there's a lot of paperwork and there's different.
There's a
Suffolk
lot of
County.
paper, but yeah.
We got everybody in there. So, all
I
right,
highlighted and I'm ready here. So
let's try to check them off the box. Okay.
if you look at number 1, Roman numeral number 1 and number 2,
Mhm.
Joe and I talked about it ahead of time, so I made sure I wasn't wrong. Those things are policies that ABO says we have to have.
Okay.
We have the enforcement of agency projects policy. It's called something different, but it basically encompasses number 1 and number 2. My
Yes.
only thought was that there were a few things that we could add to make it a little bit more understandable and also to have some uniformity across the board with our projects. So if you go to page 35, I show you on page 35 and 36 some examples of what we do for recapturing in our closing documents. And what Joe has done in a manner that makes sense. If a project suddenly stops performing or doing what they're supposed to in year 10, you're not going to claw back 100% of the benefits back from day 1. It's going to, so he's got like a sliding scale. It was just my thought that we would want it in some kind of policy document. And I really liked, hold on. Like page 46, Dutchess County spells out literally what Joe has, but just as policy. And then we would not necessarily have to claw back, but if we were going to claw back, it wouldn't be worse than this kind of thing. And then this way it was clear and the board was kept up to date and informed as to what we're doing, because I didn't really like the idea that each project could be different and the board not be informed of what that is.
So Rosa, what's the difference between what we're looking at it on page 46 versus 35 and 36?
35 and 36 aren't a policy. It's
just a chart.
Yeah,
It's
I
a
hate to say
schedule.
it this way. It's Joe deciding when he's doing the closing documents, or Joe and attorneys deciding. It's not the board deciding. And
So you're
I
recommending
think
page
Joe's
46.
done it exactly right. I don't think he's done it wrong.
So
I just think the board should be making that choice.
Are
Are
you-
you recommending we include page 46?
yeah, are you recommending that a recovery of
Yes.
incentives along with the sliding scale be
Right.
Yeah.
implemented?
Yeah,
Okay.
I recommend that it be a policy rather than
Mhm.
just something we do.
I like it. Yeah.
Does the policy on 46, is that the same as the charts on 35 and 36?
I don't think the numbers jive,
The
but
numbers don't jive exactly, but I think that the concept is the same.
yeah, the verbiage is there. It's just that the numbers aren't jiving in there.
So we could
I think
use the numbers that Joe has if you like that better. I like the second one on page 35. Clearly, by the way,
Mhm.
the project on page 36 is Ulster NH Realty. That's
Yeah.
because it's a very long pilot. So
Yeah.
we could maybe have a chart for 10 years and 15 years. Anything over that, we could just simply state as policy that it's based on the number of years and it's divided evenly or something along those lines.
Well, what do you recommend?
I recommend both. You don't think we
We
should
have it.
have language along with the sliding scale?
Yeah,
I
that's
think we do
great.
both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joe,
So essentially,
Rose.
I'm sorry. So Rose, essentially what we're doing is we're taking something that we do in practice and formalizing it into policy, and that the board is all knows. So again, okay.
Yeah,
That makes a lot of good
I really
sense.
think Joe's done it perfectly.
Yeah,
I
I
just think that the board should be deciding it. That's all.
think that's great.
Okay. So let's
Jo-
move it over to the board.
Joe, do you see any issues with that? Like, okay, locking us into
I
something?
just want to make sure I'm clear though, on Duchess, for instance, they only have a 10-year
Mhm.
recapture policy, recapture. Right, it's 10 years. So what we've done from an operating standpoint is we've expanded the term of the recapture to coincide with the term of the pilot agreement. So if you do a pilot agreement, we have it spread over 15 years. If you want to narrow it to 10 years, that's your call.
No, what we were saying was we would do specifically 10 years, 15 years, and then also say, if it's more than that, then this is what we would do it based on the number of, divide it evenly over 30 years or whatever the number of years is.
So a
Okay.
deviated pilot schedule, a sliding scale would have to be created.
It would have to be created and we would just
But-
simply say
Yeah.
sort of how that would be done.
And Joe almost has it there on page 36 anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
correct?
Yeah,
So-
yeah.
All right, perfect.
The other part of this was, hold on, I'm sorry. Recapture, I'm just reading my highlight. Recapture. Okay, so no, then that was it. I liked that. Oh, page 45. One other thing that Duchess does was, again, basically what we've done in practice, but maybe putting it as policy so that if it's not the same board going forward, that we have some kind of set way that we've been doing it. It's identifying and reporting projects with performance-based incentive deficiencies. So non-compliant projects, what happens when you're non-compliant? This is very close to what we already do, what they do. What we've been doing instead of having a specific review committee is they come before governance. So I was thinking I would take this and edit it to do what we've done and have been doing. Does that make sense?
So you're recommending both page 44 and 45?
45 and 46.
46.
Fine.
I like it because it gives some parameters for the board. I mean, it covers everything from, natural disaster to loss of a major supplier, or customer.
Now,
I mean, it seems to identify things that really happen to industry or businesses that really have an impact on their performance. So I like that there's at least some guidelines there for the board, and then, can discuss.
Yeah, and we would make sure that we don't write it in a way that we're stuck,
Right.
right? That we have, but I think this just all adds to the transparency
Mhm.
and
now
to.
let me ask you something. Barring that,
Clarity.
we've only had 100-year flood and storm, 100 of them in the last 2 years. But in there under natural disaster, do we
Pandemic?
leave that the way that is, or do we broaden that a little bit in the event of a state or a national emergency?
I think we do
Public
broaden
health
that.
crisis?
You're right.
I mean,
Yeah.
that would be pandemic related. That's going to put, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I seem to all of a sudden be rewriting a lot of contracts, labor agreements that I had with people, and we're putting, into those different agreements, that kind of language to help protect them and protect us too.
How about we look at that language, Mike, and or use Joe's favorite term, which is
Limited, but including but not limited to.
including but not limited to.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. I wrote that in to add it. Do you want me to put this all together nicely and bring it back to you before it
Yeah.
goes to the board?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Anything that has like imminent threat to public safety or whatever because of whatever the pandemic or
Okay.
whatever.
Okay, great. So I'll work on that. I'll get Joe's input and then I'll bring it back to you guys at the next governance committee
No,
meeting.
that's a good job right there. Looks really good.
Mhm.
Okay. What are we on, Rose? Public comment.
No, you're skipping here. What are you
We're
doing?
not on public comment?
No, that was That
Oh,
was number one. Number two,
we got,
page 48, this is quick.
okay,
Uh, when we did the Kingstonian public hearing, we were concerned with the number of people that would be commenting. And we certainly don't want to limit people speaking, but Joe had suggested at the time that maybe we should have a policy to fall back on for public comment. And this could be for public hearings and or regular meetings, what the rules are. Again, typically this is not an issue, but we just want to have something to protect us, so that we're not picking and
Touch-
choosing who we're listening to in any
touch a
way.
base in there. It says relevant contact information on sign-in sheet. That's fine and dandy. I do believe if you're going to speak publicly, something has to do with Ulster County, I think you need to say your name and you need to tell us where you reside.
Now, Bill Kimball said to me that that's optional. Is
I
that
don't
true,
know.
Joe?
Joe, could you weigh in on that? Is it optional or can we create that? Because, if you got somebody coming in from Long Island that wants to take 3 minutes up to go on and on about, issues in Ulster County, wouldn't you like to know that?
Yeah, that's, to be safe, Mike, I want to check that, but it's, I see that uniformly at all public hearings and meetings where you identify who you are and where you reside, because that's a reasonable question, a reasonable request. But I'll confirm that. I'll confirm.
Yeah.
So
that.
could we just ask for town and just zip code, so we're not, or something, not getting their
Yeah,
actual
you don't need their
address, right?
physical
You don't want your
address.
physical address, right?
Reside
I
in
guess
the-
the other question I
what-
have is, if we really have a lot of people, you don't want to squelch public comment, but we have some kind of filter to know if
No,
it's
but
someone
we
who actually
also-
resides, hold on, who resides
Yeah.
in the county. But if we don't have time, there's also opportunity for written comment during public hearing, correct?
Yes, that's what I was gonna say too. Yes.
Right.
We have a 2-week period afterwards that we leave open, so we certainly welcome the comment.
Now,
Yeah.
For what it's worth, Chair, I had the same argument with an attorney for another group about signing in. And she insisted that in the open meetings law, it's optional, but I'll let Joe check it. And the other piece with how many people can talk and how long, you don't want them talking perhaps 10 minutes per person.
No.
3 minutes is a
you
little
got it.
short.
I think
5
limit
minutes.
1
We
3 minute
usually
period.
do on this other board, we usually do,
Yeah.
we picked 7 minutes to give people plenty of time.
Woo! No,
No,
And-
we say 2 or 3 minutes at every public hearing. It's just a matter of putting it in a policy, what we already
I
do.
must disagree. We need to
Okay.
give them.
you know what, Rick? I
time
look at
to
it this
more
way.
than introduce themselves.
If you want to talk for 15 minutes on, and that's another thing we need to put in here.
I didn't say 15, 5.
I'm getting at this. Agenda items only. That's another thing that's got to be put in there. We don't want somebody up there for 10 minutes talking about life inside a golf ball. So if you want to forward your minutes to the next speaker, there's another issue we need to talk about, because you know what I'm saying? So
Well, what we've done though is it's not that you're dead set cut off at 3 minutes, Rick. We give you the option, or we've come back to people once everyone else has had their time, if there's enough time. You can't give every person 7. If you had 100 people at 7 minutes, you can't do
Well,
that.
that's not gonna happen.
Yes, it did. It
when?
did. At the Kingstonian, we had.
No, it didn't. And you
It-
know what, for something that important, if we were there all night, that goes with the territory. I just think 3 minutes is too much. I do think Joe's gonna find out that it's optional, ask for addresses. Right
I
then,
think 3 minutes is too much or not enough?
not enough.
Oh,
5 minutes. I think, again, just need to be
I-
receptive to.
I-
Why don't we just I do believe you have to give people some time to say what they, it's a public hearing. We're inviting them to be there to make comment, right?
Right.
So no more, maximum 5 minutes, if there's a lot of people. And, it's like, if we have time, you come back, anybody wants additional comment with the maximum of another 3 minutes or something.
Or
I
they
don't
can
know.
send in a letter.
Or a letter, or right.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if you want to give them time to filibuster on the floor or just make their statement about their concerns. I mean, that's my take on it, you know, I
They
mean,
can always send in a formal letter to be part
And
of the
certainly
permit.
the chair always has the ability to allow them to go longer.
Right.
That's his or her prerogative. So
Yes,
let's just set the tone of, we want to
Yeah,
hear. from you.
I think in it though, it's got to be on the agenda items only.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, I
okay.
agree. Yeah,
All right?
absolutely.
We'll be all over the place.
Yeah, I think
Yep,
that's
agree.
typical.
one thing too, this policy from Suffolk County says at the beginning of each meeting. It came to my attention that we used to do public comment before and after our meetings.
Okay.
But because if you comment after we've already voted,
What's the sense?
isn't that irrelevant, right? Don't you want the public comment to come before you make a vote if it's something important? So I understand putting it at the end of the meeting so that you can go and people can ask and do whatever. But I do think it does make sense to get the public comment before
No,
you vote.
the public would like to comment on agenda items prior to the board discussing it.
Yeah.
You know, that they get their point of view out there. Sure.
Can we be flexible that we have public comment on any agenda items that are being voted on that day first before the board votes? And then at the end, if there's
Open up for the
discussion,
general public.
public comment on things that we've discussed, but not necessarily are making decisions yet as a board.
The
Would
only
the
issue is
public
you
know
might
what
not
we're voting
know.
on?
Yeah.
Would the public know what we're voting on?
Not necessarily. You could vote
Don't we
on
put our
something.
agenda out? Well, I guess
Yes.
we don't. It's not in the agenda what we're voting on, but we know. They'll know what the
Yep.
agenda items are.
Yeah, but the public won't know what, so I
No,
think.
But if
Can
they
we
come
just-
in, don't they just normally come in for the whole meeting anyway? If there's they know what the agenda items are. They're going to sit through a meeting anyway until public comment comes. They know that's on the agenda. So if we start first with some things, what does it matter? If they don't have to know what we're voting on.
But if we
No,
voted
but
on
you
something,
want their
Diane, and we
comment.
don't have something up front, we say you can comment at the end of the meeting. Well, if we did vote on something that they wouldn't know we were going to vote on, it's too late for them to make a comment except to say, I disagree with the vote you already took. So having public comments on agenda items up front, and maybe you can limit the time to 10 minutes in total.
But yeah, I'm agree. I was saying the same. I think we're going the same place. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
I just didn't articulate that very well, but yeah.
Something at the front and something at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to use this policy on page 48 and then add the agenda items only to it?
Yes.
Do you want to make a motion to recommend that this is what we do?
Yeah.
Make a motion that we add the language that you just proposed, Rose.
I would like to change it. I don't know whether I do that after I make my second or before, so
Do
I'll
you want-
second it.
But that's for a public hearing, Rick. Do you want- For a regular meeting, you want somebody to have 7 minutes?
No.
Ahead of
So
the
we're
meeting?
talking here
Can't do
about
that.
regular meeting, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so after making my second discussion, my discussion piece is 3 minutes should be 5 minutes.
Perfect.
With
Oh, right.
discretion exercised by the chair as to how many people, just 5 minutes, leave it at 5 minutes.
I think that makes sense. Discretion by chair. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you. The
Okay.
last one was
We
the.
gotta vote on
records re- Oh, yep,
Oh, yeah. So we have a motion by Diane, right?
yep.
It's
seconded by
amended to
Rick.
reflect 5
Right.
minutes for comment.
Second.
Yes.
Thank you.
Second, Rick?
I second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
The record retention, we have to have this policy
Yeah, we do.
per ABO. Can we please copy, I think County of Clinton had a good one, or that's on page, I'm sorry, page
Mhm.
49.
49.
Well, everything you have is permanent.
Gotta love that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We don't have one right now, do we, Rose?
No, we don't have a record retention disposition policy.
If Joe's read this. and
Or
he
Joe,
thinks
if you have a better one?
Well, I thought, I mean, in years past, the state has a very involved record retention policy.
Mhm.
And it says things like you got to keep minutes for all time. But like, contracts, you don't have to keep copies of contracts until, after they've expired. You can throw those if you want. So, and the Clinton County one is a summary of the New York State requirement. So I think Clinton County would be fine.
Okay,
Okay. I'll make a motion to recommend to the full board the policy that we see in front of us.
Second,
all in favor?
aye.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's one.
Did you want to do the procurement and then that's it?
Yeah, let's
And then
do
the CRC will be a 3-minute meeting, luckily.
Yeah, and so in the procurement, which is page 59, okay. In it, the question's been raised about having where's my notes? Adding a collusion clause, correct, Rose?
Yes, we have to add, okay, it came up as part of our audit. ABO requires us to have the collusion during a bidding process thing added to our procurement policy. We've not run into this issue because we've not put things out for bid over a certain dollar amount. So it's not been an issue for us. So it's not that we're doing things wrong. It's just that should this come up, that we have what we're supposed to do in here. I thought on page 73, there's a non-collusion certification that whatever this IDA was a good addition. And then it's Nassau County. And then there's a section on page 67 that talks about non-competitive bidding. Joe, is that the part that we have to be careful with the collusion, is the non-competitive bidding or the competitive bidding? Is that, I'm just not sure on what this section was that the ABO is requiring.
Shall be awarded by the agency.
You should do the non-collusion statement for everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joe.
Well,
And
if this
certainly this
is,
speaks to the transparency and making sure that we,
so on
Yeah,
non-collusion on page 73, Rose, if that's what you found, it's best practice,
yes.
I'm fine with that.
I just think that adds a little bit more teeth to anything that we're moving ahead on,
Yeah.
I don't think they can circle back around and say, I didn't understand or I didn't know. So,
Yeah, and should we be having, I think there was something that said, like, for staff, should we be having something, signed by any vendors over X amount about conflicts of interest also as part of the procurement?
Conflicts of interest with who? With board members?
Yeah. I just was thinking that.
Doesn't that go the other way? And we already have that covered under our ethics?
For board members, but I'm talking about for vendors.
So the vendor would have to attest that they have no conflict of interest with a board member.
Yeah, can we do that, or does it just go the other way, Joe? Or
So
Yeah,
it's got to go both ways. I mean,
Yeah.
we have that in our application,
Mhm.
we have them tell us that they have no conflicts with us.
but what about vendors?
Well, I mean, we don't do a lot of, I think that's a good idea. If we were doing a lot of, buying photocopy, buying whatever, I think that would be part of our checklist to make sure that the company that we're buying the photocopy paper for, the owner of the company isn't also a member of the IDA board,
So that sounds good to me. Rose, do you have anything in here regarding that?
There was part of the questionnaire is what made me think of it. So hold on, sorry, I flipped my page again. Page 49, then shortly after, no, not 49, sorry. What page is that? 59. Page 7, hold on. The certification, page 80. two, they ask questions about like the principal disclosure questionnaire. I kind of liked some of the stuff here, but I think that's for projects. But can we just have them sign our conflict of interest policy? Or can we just type up something that's similar to this other non-collusion thing that's just like a certification?
That's what we do. That's it. Yep. And I
Okay,
can
so
help you with that.
So we can take the base and we can bring this back to the next governance committee meeting so that you all are clear, but we can take something like this non-collusion certification. We'll go from our code of ethics, type something up and bring it back to you guys for our vendors to do as well. So that we're not paying vendors that have any kind of conflict of interest.
Wow, this thing really gets in depth. I'm going through it. I'm going, oh my Lord.
Yeah, it's intense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Rose, talking about intense and dense, when I read through these policies in anticipation of the meeting, I got turned around, maybe because of my advanced age, but I got turned around in terms of what do we have already versus what you were recommending. And I guess, if it says Nassau County, then you're recommending that, but somehow when we talk about policies, if you've got stuff in there that you're saying, hey, we should adopt this, I don't know, red line it, attention, this is something that's being recommended. Like for example, page 82 that you just recommended, we don't have that already. That's from somebody else, right?
Right. Yeah. All of that. Yeah. So, I mean, I could put like a separator in
I'm just a
between
little confused, but that's
so that it's clear, like this is our policy and that's
Something.
all part of the Nassau County one. I think in
A
my head,
separate-
it makes sense because I know what we're discussing.
Yeah,
But
you know what
in your head, that makes sense. You don't know.
a separator that says this is what I'm recommending in the pages following, something like that.
Okay.
All right,
No
thank
problem.
you. Because it is
And then
dense stuff. And the
the-
same is true within the policy. I have no problem with you redlining stuff within the policy if you're just changing a word or a paragraph or a sentence. Just redline it, something
Okay.
like that to make it easier.
and then the audit committee had a recommendation for governance for the procurement as well.
And that was in regards to, I forget already.
For contracts.
Yeah.
Right.
To revisit contracts annually and to send out an RFP for vendors over, should we have an X amount or just all service vendor? Probably X amount.
I don't think you need to do it for X amounts because you're going to find some stuff is,
That's
perfect
true.
example, paper, $250. I mean, what are we going to do there?
So
what do you
maybe
want to
well, paper wouldn't get an RFP, right?
No.
That would be us doing the verbal quotations and stuff. We have rules in there on that stuff in the procurement policy, but maybe anything over a service over $5,000 or
I
something
think so.
like that.
You
We
want to do
could
that, and that's an annual number, right?
Yeah, $5,000 a year. So we would do an RFP, I think every 3 years, not 5, like Loki Brill was saying.
No, I think 3 too, because I think we keep a handle on it a little bit better, and we don't, I like the idea of 3. Landscape changes too quick.
So the RFP goes out every 3 years, but annually there's a review.
But
So
every contract is renewed or not annually.
So UHY, for example, it's a 3-year contract, but we're going to review it once a year.
Yes, we certainly don't have to use them this year. Yeah.
Okay.
The intention is that we do, right? But I think all of our vendors that are paid $5,000 or more for the year, that's what we do.
Yeah. On a year to year. Okay.
Because then again, you guys, let's say, I hope you don't, let's say you guys aren't on the board next year. Every year the board should have the chance to review this stuff.
No, they really should. They should be able to decide maybe that wasn't the right fit for that new board. Okay.
So it was the code of ethics, the 1 year, 3 year, and then what was the other, the collusion.
And the collusion, correct.
Thank you.
And that's collusion, that collusion will run in every contract. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
A code of ethics is all service contracts as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the collusion is for non-competitive bidding. That's a specific
Non-competitive
type of
bidding,
thing,
correct.
right? Yeah.
I thought we just said that for collusion, it's both competitive and non-competitive.
Competitive and non-competitive, but it's only for things we're putting out for bidding. We're not putting out, an RFP is not the same as, right? Joe, wasn't there a dollar threshold or something for the collusion?
No, it's got to cover both. You're right, Joe. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I respond to RFPs all the time and I have to sign a non-collusion.
Yeah.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And it really
Thanks,
curtails
Rose.
activity.
Yeah. Oh, Joe.
I'm getting punchy.
I know, everybody's tired. Well, we've been at this since 9 o'clock, so.
Yeah, this is a long run here. All right. You want
Is
to
this
cover the
coming back
compensation?
to the, is this going straight to the board or is this coming
This
back?
goes,
to the-
this goes straight to the board. Yes.
Okay, all right, and then we just need a motion, et cetera, and then we're done.
Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Diane. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
You
Thank
want to
you.
knock the compensation policy out? It's a little short. It's quick. You want to wait? You want to table it?
Doesn't matter to me. The other ones were more important.
That's what, yeah, the other one's way more important, but that's
Yeah, why
That's-
don't,
going to be intense. That's going to be
We'll just
involved.
get the compensation over with and assign a subgroup to work on
And
UTEP.
you know what?
Yeah.
We're going to have another governance probably right up in July here. I'll get with Rose and I imagine with audit and then we'll go
Oh,
through that.
I'm sorry, you're right. The compensation was very quick. I remember what
Yeah,
it
it's
was.
short. It's short.
It came again as part of the annual reporting. There's a time and attendance policy
Yep.
piece that they ask about. One of the other IDEAs,
Yeah.
ironically here, this one's Orange County on page 90. Theirs is the compensation, reimbursement, and attendance policy. So it
Mhm.
just combined it all. So rather than creating our own time and attendance policy, I thought, well, we'll just add it to the compensation policy and skip having a 47th policy here.
And that's going to cover our time and attendance. We spoke about time and attendance as a separate.
Yeah, so it's,
policy.
let's see. So here it says, in the last paragraph, board members are encouraged to attend all meetings, but more than 5 absences per year may be reported to the IDA's Oversight Committee, the ABO. Said members and officers of the agency shall put forth their best efforts to perform their duties, blah, 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 blah. I don't know that it needs to go to the ABO. Could it go to the legislature? Could it just go to the board in general? But like, it does make sense. If somebody's missing 11 out of 12 meetings, I don't know what the magic number is. I don't know if we want to use 5, but we have to have something. So that was what I found.
Well, perhaps 5 is fine. And Rose, you keep track of this. And you should have a discussion, in my mind, a discussion with the chairman who may not be aware of it, so that the chairman can chat with the individual about their commitment to the board. And then
How about
after
if they
that, the chair can do what he or she wants to. More than likely, they would go to the legislature and recommend that the person not be reappointed.
So you would leave it at the discretion of the chair after 5, it would be at the discretion of the chair?
Sure.
so
Yes.
I have just a clarifying
Well, if
question.
it's
Is
the
this is this for absences that are not been shared? You know what I mean? Like there's some people that miss meetings and they let you know they're missing a meeting and why. Right. So does this cover all meetings, whether or not excused or has let the chair or that they're not be able to attend?
I
think
read it
should
as all
include-
absences. It's not that you can't miss a meeting, but maybe is 5 too low? I don't know. I mean, we only have 12 meetings a year. If you're missing that many,
We have
maybe.
12.
Right, there's 12 meetings a year and then there's committee meetings as well.
No, I'm not arguing the number. I just think be clear
Yeah.
in the language, whether they're
No, you're right.
excused absences or not, right?
I think excused absences are excused, that they don't
I have
include
seen
in the
some
file.
policies where they differentiate between
Yeah.
excused and non-excused
Yeah,
absences.
so I think
Yeah.
it's non-excused.
But even if somebody has an excuse, I mean, at some point it's still an issue, right? Like, and I'm not saying that an excused absence, there are reasons that you certainly should be tending to your personal life over the IDA board. I'm just saying that maybe at some point it's an issue then for you to be on the IDA board.
You know what? I don't disagree with you on that. I don't want to politicize every little event that takes place. Hopefully the chairman of the board would be saying, look, I know you've had excuses for 10 of the 12 meetings, but you're pushing it a little bit. You can't put that in writing, Rose. So why don't we just?
We have to put something in writing. Though.
I think with the
Yeah, I
discretion
didn't say
of
you
the-
not put something, but you can't put, I think you need an excused as an excused.
I think
And
the
as Joe
discretion
said,
of
it
the
is-
chairman, because in there, even in that policy, it says it may
Yeah.
be reported to the ABO. Okay, so I think that's up to the discretion of the chair, and I kind of agree with Diane too here that an unexcused absence is you're going to need it. It doesn't necessarily mean you're not in the
No.
loop on everything or discussing things with Rose or the chair or anybody,
Right.
or conversations with Joe. It's just that you physically couldn't attend that day. That's what it comes down to. I don't think we have to worry about it with this board. You know,
Nope.
No. There's nobody was like, I had it in mind, but I was simply that the ABO says, do you have this? And the answer is
I know, Rose, you want to have a policy for people who talk too much. That's
Yeah,
what,
there you go.
Or
Well, then
little.
I'd be fired, Rick. Discretion. So discretion of the chair. So over 5, and it's at the discretion of the chair.
of the chair. Yeah. Should
Okay.
we? Hey, Rick, I'm not picking on you, but should we limit you to 7 minutes per committee?
I can talk
I
faster.
say 5. I think 5.
Diane takes 5.
3 is not enough, and over 5 is too much.
Takes me that long to introduce myself.
You're like the princess and the pea, right? Just a little.
Oh, good stuff.
Thank
covered
you,
a lot of
guys. I
ground.
really appreciate
right.
all the time today.
We're going to table the UTEP and the matrix over to the next meeting, and that's to be announced. And Diane, I don't know if you want to separate the days out or whatever, Rick and Diane, what do you want to do? If you don't mind back to back with the governance,
It's okay by me.
Okay.
Honestly, it really just depends on my schedule at work. My day
Correct.
job gets in the way. So it just,
We're
if I
looking
can
at-
carve out time, I'd rather just go through it because I think it helps flow
Yeah.
from audit to governance or vice versa. So
We're
And
looking
Chair,
at July, maybe end of July or something, because we want it, audit should be meeting quarterly.
Okay.
And so at the end of the second quarter, maybe end of July, or maybe beginning of August, something like that we could look at.
Okay.
sounds good.
Chair, I just,
Do we need a
I
motion
recommend-
do we
Chair?
need a motion to move the compensation policy over to the approval of the full board? Can I get a motion?
so moved.
Second,
Second,
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chair, just a suggestion on the UTEP. I don't know whether the next meeting is just dedicated to UTEP, or
Pretty much.
there's so much there.
There's a lot.
It'll be a
There's a
few
lot to
meetings.
cover.
It's
You
not
know?
gonna be one meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to cover, Rick. We're gonna have to fold in the community benefits program that you guys have created. Everybody's created, which is a great job on that. And then I'm sure something will rear its ugly head to be thrown in there on top of it. Trust me.
Sure.
I see it coming.
and
So,
the item for our next governance meeting, we just dedicate all of our time to that.
I think the majority of the time is going to be
Probably.
dedicated to the UTEP.
Good.
and me. Yeah, I would have to say.
Okay. Good.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. Along that lines, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, you got it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Joe, thank you for sticking around. We really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Joe.
We always
Thanks, Joe.
appreciate your input all the time.
Good. Have a good day, everybody. Take care.
You too, Joe.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
And
right,
can you
guys.
stop the recording so we can go to the CRC?
Oh, the CRC.
Yeah, it'll be quick, luckily, right?
Yeah,
I'll be right back.
Okay, so.
I'll be right back also.
Okay.
It's still recording, just so you know.
Okay.